Hi, I'm making a game about little guys. You order them around to build castles and fight monsters. I want to show you its weird beginnings, a fatal flaw that nearly killed the game, and how I brought it back to life. I started making this game last year. It began as this weird battle royale simulation I hacked together in a weekend. I was just playing around with these little characters who looked like candy. No end goal, just wanted to see them beat the crap out of each other. But it felt like there was something there, so I kept adding stuff. I made this lasso tool that you could use to lasso up your little guys and command them to do your bidding, make them walk around. Then I gave them the ability to attack stuff. There's no enemies, so I just had them attack each other. Now, this had an unintended side effect. If you select a crowd and target themselves, they will straight up battle royale. It was a bug, but it was just too fun to fix, so I kept it. Then, of course, mining for resources. I added these big gemstone deposits you could break, and then gave the little guys the ability to pick stuff up and carry things around. Here's a bug where little guys would finish making a pile of rocks, and then go steal from each other's piles. I made a few attempts at designing walls, and then made this design I really liked. Also, this meant I needed actual pathfinding so little guys can navigate through the world. And now, with mining for resources and base building, it's almost a game. But it's not a game without some kind of threat. So I drew some enemies, I put these weird little grunts in the game. Now we actually need something to defend, so I added a king, gave it a little crown, and I made it so that the king doesn't obey commands, it just runs away from enemies. And finally, losing the king doesn't mean losing the game. The king will drop its crown, and the enemies will try to take the crown away, giving you one last chance to take it back and crown a new king. And after 2 months, that was a basic gameplay loop, building castles and fighting monsters. And it all started from a pretty dumb experiment that eventually began to show its potential. So if you want to make a game, but you feel stuck in the idea phase, feel free to experiment with something silly. Hack together something crappy in a weekend. It doesn't even have to qualify as a game, just keep it silly and keep exploring until you find the thing you want to pursue. It's less pressure, and you get to find out what works and what doesn't. Now, speaking of finding out what works and what doesn't, at this point, what I should have done is start playtesting immediately. Instead, what I did was add a snail tank enemy, bombs, little meat characters, a giant lobster boss. You can pick up enemies and use them as weapons. Now, these are fun ideas, but let me explain what was wrong with this approach. I released a demo on my Discord, and with the help of many valuable and friendly people, I quickly learned how challenging and unintuitive this game was to play. And it all boiled down to pretty much one thing. I couldn't decide if the game was a classic strategy game or a colony simulator. Was it supposed to be like StarCraft, or RimWorld, Age of Empires, or Dwarf Fortress? It was this confusing mixture of both. For example, you had to manually move your little guys around. You had to manually carry items across the map. Building things was exhausting. First, you had to gather resources close by, select some guys, place a blueprint, assign guys to the blueprints, and so on. The player was involved with every grueling step of the process. On the other hand, there was some automation. Guys could go back and collect more items. Guys would automatically attack nearby enemies. But players were so used to doing everything manually, they didn't even realize this. They would still manually attack enemies, even if they didn't have to. Do you see the dissonance here? I was randomly making the player do the dirty work, and the player was so busy micromanaging, they never had a chance to be creative or build a castle. It took 5 steps to build a single wall. Imagine if you had to use co-op controls to move Link's limbs in Breath of the Wild. That's what the game felt like. So instead, I leaned harder into automation, which is a very important feature of colony simulators. Other colony sims, like RimWorld and Dwarf Fortress and Factorio, are really good at letting the player see the big picture and plan big things. Sometimes you need to zoom in and do some maintenance, but it's usually thoughtful maintenance. You're not frantically micromanaging 50 little guys like in my demo. Build castles, fight monsters. Those two things have to be as frictionless as possible, and automation is what I needed to make that happen. So I spent many, many months figuring out how to do that. You find yourself in the depths of Gumrock Grotto. These colorful, chalky little guys stand before you, thoughtless. One stands out, adorned with a crown upon its little head, a king. You choose not to stand idle, questioning what lurks behind the darkness around you, and you shepherd your little guys to a cozy inlet within the caves. Here you carve out a little home. Your little guys eagerly attack the cave walls, chipping away one punch, one spin kick at a time. Their king does not participate. The crown, after all, weighs heavily on those who wear it. And soon enough, you collect a surplus of little rocks and build a defensive wall around your little kingdom. All is well. But then this dubious creature emerges from the darkness. Clearly, it's no friend. As it approaches, you find yourself quaking nervously. It comes closer and closer. And then, bravely, your little guys march after the enemy. A few kicks and punches is all it takes, and the kingdom is safe again. Or is it? A fleet of enemies rides in from the north. Surely you can handle this. You send your little guys into battle, but then another fleet makes its entrance from the east. You divide your numbers amongst the foes, forced to spread thin. You begin losing little guys to the carnage. The rest flail in desperation, giving it their all. You just might see this through. What's that? Is somebody knocking? Good lord, they're in the walls. They're making a beeline for the king. Somebody's gotta tell him, but he can't hear us. He's got AirPods in. And just before it's too late, he's rescued. But he's hurt. And the rest of your little guys, left in shambles, broken, crumbling away, forgotten in the back pocket of life, and then sat upon. But it can't end here. You scour the menus for a second chance, and you find it. A bakery, promised to produce more little guys. It's expensive to be sure, but it's all we got. You assemble a bakery with the last of your strength, and from the very giblets of your fallen friends, you feed the machine. And from its mouth, it births a new friend. Immediately, they get to work, reviving your kingdom with fresh blood. And pretty soon, your little kingdom is not so little anymore. But is it big enough to ward off what remains behind the darkness? So, this is how I fixed the game. It started with two questions. What does the player want to do? And how easy is it to do that? Let's answer those. What does the player want to do? When the player starts the game, they want to gather resources. Cool. How easy is it? In the old version, you had to select exactly which guys should go mining, switch to the attack mode, then click a big rock, and when they finish, go back, find some guys, do it again. That's a lot of friction. In the current version, one of the main tools is the destruction tool. Click it, select a big area, and you're done. Whatever little guys are available will automatically get to work, and you can forget about it. It's clear what it does. It can be used to tear down and move buildings. The game tells you which tiles you're about to destroy, and reminds you which ones you've set for destruction. No friction. What else does the player want to do? They want to build stuff. How easy is it? In the old version, we've been through this. It sucks. There's so much friction. In the current version, one of the main tools is the build tool. Click it, pick a building, place a blueprint. And that's it. Whatever little guys are available will automatically start building and find the materials themselves. You can click and drag to build your castle walls, and we've got a few other buildings. A gumball machine to store your leftover items, and a bakery to make more little guys. Now you can actually build your castle, no friction. What originally would have taken, hundreds of clicks and the player's full attention is now just a few clicks, and the player gets to focus on the big picture. Set some rocks for destruction, place some blueprints, the little guys will figure it out. But if you want to override that behavior, you can. Select some guys to see what they're working on, and click on another job, no friction. But did this all work? Yes. I released another demo on the Discord, and players enjoyed this far better than the first version. They had an easier time doing what they wanted to do, and this gave them time to be creative. For example, This maze strategy was very popular. It helped defend the kingdom by funneling enemies. Some players committed to making as many guys as possible, and then seeing how low they could get the frame rate. I've since set a limit on the number of little guys. And this player drew a Pikachu face, just cuz. Even though it was a pretty simple tech demo, not many features, I think I just have to trust that players will make their own fun if you give them the tools to do so.
Oh no, no. Dang it.
It's over.
Oh.
It took a lot of work to get to this point. I played a bunch of games, scribbled pages and pages of notes, and I scrapped a ton of ideas. It needed to be as simple as possible, but that's such a hard thing to admit. I thought that if the player wasn't fully engaged at all times, they would get bored. That they needed to have precise control over everything to stay interested. Now, complexity, it can be good, but it shouldn't be a roadblock to the player's most basic actions. You don't need to embed complexity into the code of your game. You can have simple gameplay and allow complexity to emerge from it. I was so afraid of being boring that I forgot to make the game playable. And now that it's playable, what about fighting monsters? Boy, just you wait, I haven't forgotten about the snail tank, or explosives, or using enemies as weapons, or the giant lobster, and of course, all the other things needed to make this game complete. Doors, healing, soldiers, floors, more enemies, cannons, more automation. It's so open-ended. But the only way I could have opened that end is by listening to players, and actually making the game playable. No matter how simple it is, it needs to be playable. The little guy's game is in good hands, which are my hands. But soon, it'll be in your hands. Actually, you can play it right now. It's on my Discord. Try it out. Tell me how it feels. The link's in the description, and while you're on your way down there, please subscribe to this YouTube channel.